Let's talk about BRICS nations. Seen a lot of growth, in coverage of the BRICS nations. We've seen other countries wanting to join them.
There's a lot of chatter about it.
Yeah. So part of me thinks it would be healthy to go into a multipolar world. It's probably good for Bitcoin.
Well, I mean, healthy. Yeah. I mean, it could be painful for the Treasury. I mean, first of all, let's walk through what it is, right?
Well, can I just say why I think it's healthy? I think the US has too much control over the other countries. Like other countries suffer under
smaller
US
countries really do suffer. Yeah,
and I think the chance to break away from that. I mean, we made the show with Alex Gladstein about economic imperialism. I mean, it's not good. And for other countries to have an opportunity to break away from that, I think could be a good thing. Bad for the US, good for the rest of the world.
Yeah.
But I don't know if ultimately bad for the US is long-term good for the rest of the world because of the nations that are part of BRICS.
That's the problem, is how quickly, how badly.
Yeah.
So BRICS, for your listeners, it's a cooperative of countries that have agreed to band together to kind of create their own trading economy, right? So they're talking about creating their own currency. They haven't yet because you need to have somebody's currency in there that you can trust, or you create one collectively, right? So the nations are Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, right? So you put all those together, you get BRICS. And that's what they're trying to do. And you're hearing a lot of chatter about, hey, we've got to pull away from the dollar hegemony, right? So we've got to. It's just too powerful. Well, I mean, look what happened last year when Russia stepped over the line, attack Ukraine. Well, the answer from the United States was, well, we're going to seize their treasuries and we're going to cut them off SWIFT. Okay, so
and maybe blow up a pipeline,
and maybe
it was them. Maybe
there's only a few operatives around the world who could have pulled that off.
It wasn't me. It wasn't Danny.
Danny, where were you?
I was in that little stretch of sea between
ChatGPT who blew up the pipeline. No, it won't know because
this data's too old.
Too old. So. It happened too recently. So that's what you're hearing. But now you're hearing of other countries talking about it. And Iran has just applied. Saudi Arabia is talking about it. So what they're looking for is they're really looking for a way to settle trades in non-US dollar denominations.
Do you think this is mainly a political move, mainly an economic move, or it's just both?
Both, definitely.
Right.
For instance, China just settled a very large LNG trade, natural gas trade, with United Emirates, and it was in yuan. It was in Chinese yuan. So it's real. They're doing things, or it's happening. If you put together the BRICS nations, their GDP is actually now it's cresting the G7 nations.
Wow.
So it's actually, So I had seen a chart on that very recently about it's actually just crested it. So
when they settle the trade in the yuan, does that mean that country holds that yuan, or do you think they're still sending it back into dollars?
No. Well, no. I think that they're probably selling it right back into their own currency, right?
Hold on. So is the GDP of the G7 is falling?
Yeah.
That doesn't make sense.
As a total share.
Oh, as a total share. This is a percentage.
Yeah.
Okay. I was going to say that didn't make any sense. So it's about crossed. Oh, it's crossed already.
It's crossed already. So it's pretty interesting. So it's real. I mean, could it? So the real question is, like, what everybody wants to know and what everybody's trying to figure out is could BRICS cause the U.S. Treasury to no longer be the global reserve asset, meaning the U.S. Because what happens is you want to hold treasuries so you have an easy way to get dollars, right? because if you hold your own currency and you need to constantly move that in and out of dollars, then you're at risk. But if you hold treasuries, you're not at risk. If you know you're going to need dollars, you're naturally hedged by owning treasuries. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
All right. So that's why the U.S. Treasury is the global reserve asset, because all these countries need access to dollars quickly without the interest rate, without the currency risk, the FX risk. So the holding treasuries. So if they can break away from holding treasuries and use their own currency, then they don't need to worry about propping up the United States and propping up the U.S. treasuries. They can sell their treasuries and use their own currency.
What would UAE be holding? Would they be holding
that's a good question.
Chinese treasuries?
I don't know. I don't know what their balance sheet looks like, to be honest. So, but interestingly, that's the question: is could this eventually cause the collapse of the U.S. Treasury from being the world reserve asset? Well, what would be the global reserve asset? Well, the obvious thing would be gold.
Yeah.
Right. Why? Because it's been around for centuries. It's trusted as a store of value, and so it's not surprising that you're seeing huge amounts of gold being bought by all these countries recently, right? And so, you
think that's why they're buying ahead of this?
Because
both Russia and China have bought a lot of gold.
They bought a lot of gold, and it's all started happening. It really started to flip. Like gold was net being sold by sovereigns and central banks, all the way up until the Great Financial Crisis. And then after the Great Financial Crisis, all these central banks started buying gold, and so it kind of flipped, and now it's gone positive. And there's the chart. So Russia, China, India, Turkey, all accounted for the bulk of those purchases that we're seeing, and that's the interesting part. So
why do you not think we've seen such a massive rise in the price of gold? Because this is like a high indicator.
Because gold is manipulated with paper and derivatives.
But that's what we've been told. But how? I've never really fully understand how it's being manipulated.
You could sell paper, create paper around it that you don't really have attached to any reserves that are in vaults, right? And I don't know how Goldman is marking their paper, but they're short massive amounts of gold, and so it's just a way for them to hold the price down. It's like the Bitcoin future. We just short the future.
Why is it in Goldman's interest to keep the price down?
It's a good question. I mean, that's probably a much deeper conversation than this than what we're pointing to here. But you don't want gold to usurp the U.S. Treasury, right? You don't want that. You want the U.S. Treasury to be what everybody holds.
Right.
So you want the Treasury to be if you're a U.S.-centric business, if you're a U.S. person, if you're the U.S. Treasury, that's what you want. So, and that's what this is kind of threatening, right? So this is threatening. Is it threatening it really yet? No. I mean, the dollar it's a massive share of a means of exchange across the world, right? So even if you look at it's been falling. It was in the 70s, 72% of all transactions were done in dollars just 10 years ago? It's fallen. It's under 60% now. It's like 59%. But it's still, there's nothing near it. There's nothing close to it. I think the euro is at like 20 or 21%. So it's not even close. So the dollar still has a chokehold on the entire world. Let's make that clear. It's not, and it has to do with a lot of different things. It has to do with the fact that treasuries are the reserve asset. Okay. It has to do with the petrodollar, a transaction-based energy transactions are by and large done in US dollars around the world. Okay. It also has to do with the fact that countries who cannot lend in their own currency, that have hyperinflated before, that don't have the ability to issue their own debt in their own currency. They have to issue debt in the U.S. currencies, right? They have to issue debt that's based in U.S. dollars. So the euro dollar market is massive around the world, okay? So it's so deeply ingrained into the system. And this is why we say U.S. dollar would be the last one to hyperinflate. It's in everything.
But you were talking earlier about like a massive credit event. Presumably, if massive institutions like Goldman are short gold, a gold price running up could cause that could be one of the triggers. If they have to mark their books correctly,
I'm not going to predict that, but I don't. Yeah, I mean, if gold doubled or tripled, that would not be good for them.
Interesting,
right? So that would be a very bad moment for them. So yeah, I mean, it's in their interest to keep issuing paper and keeping the price down. So now I'm not. Let me back up. I haven't studied Goldman's balance sheet. I don't know exactly what they hold. I don't know that, but I've just heard recently that they hold a massive negative derivative position in gold. So
so if the BRICS nations form their own currency, do you think it would be like a basket currency?
Well, so that's the problem, right? So none of these countries have really been trustworthy to anyone or each other.
Yeah.
Not that the U.S. is, but again, the U.S. has the chokehold. You know, are you going to trust China let's say that you want to have a gold-backed yuan? Are you going to trust that they have the gold in the vaults that they say they do? Are you going to send in teams to audit them? Are they going to allow that? I don't know. I mean, and how much gold would they really have to buy? That's a lot of gold, right? That's a lot of gold to back the yuan. Another thing is look, the Chinese economy it's not a tremendous economy. They have their own debt to GDP problems. I mean, their debt to GDP is in the hundreds as well, 350, and that we know of. We don't know exactly what it is, and their whole economy, their people in China, their savings is in their real estate.
Yeah.
So their homes when we talk about, well, what should I buy? Gold or stocks? They don't own that stuff. They own their homes. That's their net worth. And so all their net worth is tied up in this real estate market, and the real estate market is not good out there. It is massive problems we started seeing last year. So, I mean, where are you going to denominate it? There are problems with it. So as much attention as excitement as there's been around BRICS, there are deep structural problems with those countries already. So it's not like something they're just they're going to band together. The dollar's no longer going to be number one. You know, we're going to have a few currencies. They'll start doing trades in yuan or their own currencies like we're seeing happen. But this is a long tail event. So.
Yeah. I mean, you need a single currency for it to be competitive to the dollar. So is it, that's why I ask, is
Good
it?
question.
Well, so yeah.
It can't be gold. The gold is not a means of exchange, right? It's not good for trading, for barter.
No,
you can't. Yeah, I can't say, hey, Peter, you know, I really like this house. I'm going to rent it from you for the summer. I'll give you a couple of gold coins. What?
Yeah,
like it just doesn't work that way, right? So,
or you weren't sure how to get gold.
Even worse.
Yeah.
I mean,
do you want a cup
of? You want
you can have it for the summer.
A cup of coffee. What are you going to do? Scrape off some? I mean, like what? So it. However,
I've heard about this invention.
However, there is a new invention. So,
but before they get to that, before we get to the Bitcoin. Is there a way they can create I don't know, like a central bank of BRICS where they have their own currency for it? Because what I'm thinking is, what are the reasons to do it? Is it
like the European Union? It'd be like that.
Yeah.
But who are they going to borrow from? China? Like, who are they going to borrow from?
Yeah.
Russia? The European Union borrows from Germany. So who's going to be that centerpiece? Who's going to, you know?
So do you think it could be something like Bitcoin?
Yeah, of course it could be. It could be. All right. So why is the Bitcoin? I mean, it's not conspiracy. It's just, why is the Bitcoin hash rate up over 350 now? What is it at? It's 300. I heard yesterday it was at 355. I mean, this is.
Yeah, it's above 350.
Keep it up on the.
Yeah.
Okay, so what percentage of that is over the, look at that rise in hash rate. Who is plugging in miners? Now, I've heard a number of theories on this. Part of it is that the S9s are being retired and the 140s are being plugged in. They're just much more efficient. They drive that much more hash. Okay, that's one thing. Another thing is you're getting people who are plugging in miners ahead of the ahead of this move in Bitcoin, right? Because look, just think of the function of it. When Bitcoin's price runs, it's very difficult to get mining set up. All right, let's back up. If Bitcoin's price falls, just turn off the switch.
Yeah.
Unplug that miner. If Bitcoin price rises, okay, and you've already got all your miners plugged in, well, you have to source energy. You have to source huts. You have to pull energy to the huts. You've got to
it's their large infrastructure.
It's much more difficult to chase, right? So maybe what's happening is that some of these 140s are getting plugged in, and they're trying to front run the halving and get as much hash up there as possible now, especially before Bitcoin's price runs. Maybe there's a massive amount of miners being plugged in China and Siberia. That's a possibility. I don't know. But it would seem to make sense that there's some sort of state player involved, and if it's not, well, it's just a whole lot of miners being plugged in. But it could be Russia's trying to load up on it. You've heard them rumble about accepting cryptocurrency as payment for their energy. So,
and how do you think they would deal with the volatility, or does that not matter because they would just settle their end? I think the difficulty is how much liquidity is required. You could only do small trade. You can
how is Bitcoin done against the ruble? Right?
Interesting. Yes, have a look.
Yeah. That's what they're thinking of. They're not thinking of what's Bitcoin done in the price of the dollar. What's it done in the price against the price of the ruble?
But I'm thinking, what's a trade in? I don't know. Are these are tens of billions, these deals, when they do an oil deal?
They're billions of dollars.
Yeah. So, definitely. But if if you'd settled a trade by $1 billion, and it was in Bitcoin first, so you got to accumulate the Bitcoin to be able to settle the trade, and then So I think we're
so you're talking about something that's way out there. This is not something that's going to happen this year.
But they could start testing small trades.
Sure. You can start testing small trades and see how it does. I mean, look, the likelihood of all of this it's still low in my opinion. I wrote about it because there is some game theory around it. There are scenarios that we need to probably start thinking through. And that's the thing that do I think that BRICS alone would topple the U.S. Treasury today? No. However, there are things that this could accumulate. I call it BRICS Plus, and what I mean is you have Iran and Saudi Arabia join, so BRICS, and then plus meaning other countries start to join, right? So we don't know who those would be, and so, but when you get enough together, banded together, and you've got enough of economy, what they need is they need enough trade with economies that are both net exporters and net importers, right? So you need countries that have raw materials that can export to countries that have manufacturing, to countries who are net importers and buying those goods and services. So it's got to work. Where the U.S. has the benefit of, I mean, we can buy and sell in dollars to all the economies, So the economy's got to get to some sort of critical mass. Let's say it did. And let's say that Bitcoin does get to a critical mass where it is possible to have these massive transactions daily in energy or in goods and raw materials. Well, now you're getting into a spot where it may be too late, but that's now the U.S. has to make a decision, Do they buy Bitcoin? And so this is the game theory, right?
This is the game theory.
Do they buy Bitcoin and start backing the US dollar by Bitcoin? or do they not? And does the BRICS denominate in Bitcoin, or do they not? Do they back their currency? And that's the game theory. Again, far out there. This is far out there thinking, but why not walk through it? Because it's very, it's on everybody's mind. Let's talk through it. So if BRICS does, if they buy Bitcoin and they back their currency by it, right? And the United States also does, well, the Treasury probably remains as the global reserve because it's backed by Bitcoin. It's backed by something that's decentralized. It doesn't. It's not inflationary. It's easily transferable. It's So all those things, right? But if the BRICS does it and if the U.S. does it and the BRICS doesn't do it, well, the U.S. Treasury is still going to remain the global reserve asset, right? Because it's back. You've got, or the U.S. dollars. I'm sorry, I'm conflating those. The U.S. dollar remains a global reserve currency backed by Bitcoin. If they do, right? If the BRICS doesn't, then the Treasury, then the dollar remains the global reserve. It remains the global monetary system, right? So, but if the U.S. doesn't do it and BRICS does it, well, that's where the U.S. could get in trouble, because if Bitcoin becomes a means of exchange that's widely accepted and everybody's using it, and it becomes this natural reserve asset that people are looking for, that's anti-inflationary, while the Treasury is doing what we're watching is happening, people will start turning to Bitcoin. And I think they will start turning. And that's the event where you're talking about, well, that's when the dollar hyperinflates, because it's over. And it's not even the BRICS nations. It's just, that's it. That's hyper-Bitcoinization. The whole world. Forget about BRICS. That's the whole world.